Welcome inside episode 570 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains in the Eastern Conference Final is now set. The NHL has its final four teams, and fans, buckle up.
It's going to be two good series, Ross, and we got three good prospects to look at today. Number 41, number 40, and we're into the 30s now, so things are getting interesting.
They certainly are, and there is a connection that I think could make one of these guys a very likely Senators pick. All that and more. This is the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.
Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Senators your first listen on this Tuesday, May 31st. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can like our videos, subscribe to the channel, and to help us grow, the best way is to leave a comment below. The comment today: which head-to-head matchup are you looking forward to most in the conference final? Is it the high-flying Connor McDavid against Nathan MacKinnon? Or are you a goalie-friendly person like this goalie-friendly show and more looking forward to Andrei Vasilevskiy against Igor Shesterkin? Pilsy, your answer.
I know we're a goalie-friendly show, Ross, but MacKinnon versus McDavid. I know it's the lame answer, classic Pilsy, but this is arguably the number one player in the world going up against the number two player in the world. But you could say the same thing about goaltending. It's the number
Except
one
not
goalie.
arguably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, both of these matchups, the greatest players, the cream rises to the top, right?
Yep.
Conference finals. Let's see how this goes. I am absolutely fired up. And Ross, every single round, I've only got one series wrong. I went 7 for 8 round one. 3 for 4 round 2.
Me too.
And we'll hope I can do better than 1 for 2 because 50% doesn't look as great there.
Yeah, and I think we had the same one wrong in the second round series, right? We both had Calgary over Edmonton. Yeah, whereas we had different series wrong in round 1 because I had Minnesota going on. And which one you got? Boston?
I had Boston going on, yeah.
Yeah, well, Carolina, they're dead. For more on that, I talked with Mike DeStefano on Locked On NHL in the national show. But, Pilsy, here's my argument for Shesterkin versus Vasilevskiy. Yeah, it's going to be awesome to see the high-flying skill of those guys for 20 minutes a night. Well, these two tendies are playing every minute of every game. It's going to be unbelievable hockey. Cash the parlay. Tampa, New York Rangers, and now they're going head-to-head. So it'll be a ton of fun going forward. Again, as hockey fans, we're extremely lucky. As the NHL, they're extremely lucky that these are the matchups going in to the first year of their US TV deal. So all of this to say, I'm just jealous, man. I just want the Ottawa Senators to be a part of this. It really feels like we're in the off season right now. But the good news is the draft rankings are continuing to climb. As you mentioned, we're into the 30s now, and that list will continue 3 per day until we get to 32 and 31, and then it'll just be 2 per day because we are really going to deep dive into the first round talent of this draft. Now, so far, Pilsy, we've done so many of these, 25 to be exact. Now, where would you say the line is drawn where you're like, okay, we're talking about fringe 5-6 defensemen, bottom 6 forwards. Where do you draw the line where it's like, okay, there's actually some real upside to these players? How deep do you think this draft is?
I would say when we started getting to the late mid 40s, before there's guys where you're like, ooh, there's a little sparkle of potential here, or there's something interesting about this guy, but there's so many other kind of deterrents that don't really make him a complete prospect. Whereas now, the ones we did yesterday and maybe the ones we did on Friday, those are the ones where I started really seeing okay, this guy has that one nice attribute, but he can complement it with 2 or 3 more nice things to make him more of a well-rounded prospect. And that's where I'm starting to see the split here.
Yeah, we certainly are. We're also starting to see new rankings coming out. Corey Pronman put out a top 127. And Pilsy, when we did our introduction video, which everyone should go check out, you can see the entire playlist of all of our draft prospects. And I keep sorting it by popularity because I'm interested to see whose name is catching people's attention right off the bat. And it seems like Paul Ludwinski and Lane Hudson are the two so far that are really getting people clicking on the link. But you can go check out our intro video where we explained our rankings. We said that Chris Peters was the brave man to not have Shane Wright first. Well, Corey Pronman has Uri Slavkovsky at first overall on his rankings. So it's going to be an interesting ride to the finish. We're going to update our rankings later today. And as we said, once the profiles are done, that's where they are in stone. Yep. And then as they move up, we'll alternate our setup going forward. But this will be a ton of fun. Why don't we just get right into it, Pilsy? I know that we've gone extremely long the last couple of shows. Ian Mendez, Jonas Sogard as a Sens Central citizen. Like, there is a ton of content to go back to and listen to on Locked On Senators. Corporate's going to get upset if we keep pumping out twice the length of the show. So let's just have some fun. Get back to our draft rankings today. And tomorrow, maybe we'll do a little bit deeper of a touch on what Corey Pronman's new rankings are, see what really surprises us, what gets us going. We'll discuss that as we get into the mid-30s of our list. Man, I can't believe we've already been buzzing this far already. It's so much fun doing these rankings, so we may as well get right back to it. All right, Pilsy, coming in at number 41 on our Locked On Senators draft rankings with an average rating of 38.83. And yes, there's a double decimal because the next man on the list is oh so close. We are going to U.S. high school hockey. It's defenseman Sam Rinzel.
And Ross, anytime, seemingly in my mind, anytime you're discussing high school hockey, there's only one place it can be. And that's in Minnesota.
I thought you were going to say the last time the Sens drafted out of high school hockey.
Is that Brian Lee?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go there, Ross. You made me go there now. I wasn't going to go there. I was going to compliment how great Minnesota high school hockey is. And it's those guys, like Rinzel would be a perfect example. He's probably a local legend. Like, being able to light it up in high school. Like, a lot of those guys, they shoo off agents and guys from college and USHL trying to draft them and bring them into their program because they're like, no, I'm loving playing high school in Minnesota, and it's a real deal down there. And
no doubt, they play their finals or their big tournament at XL and they fill the place, 18,000 strong. Yeah, crazy.
It's insane. But Sam Rinzel, obviously, he's a big enough talent, big enough kid, I should say. At 6'4" and 181 pounds, that he was like, okay, I've had my 3 years at Chaska High here. Maybe it's time I move on to the USHL. And that's what he did. He got 21 games in with the Waterloo Blackhawks. In those 21 games, 2 goals, 8 assists, good for 10 points. I should mention he's a right shot defenseman. So if you're looking at those point totals thinking, that's kind of underwhelming, he is a defenseman. And Ross has pulled up, if you're watching on YouTube, his stats with Chaska High School. 27 games. Nice. Yeah, exactly. 27 game played, 9 goals, 29 assists, good for 38 points.
He is a big kid, 6'4", still has some room to grow into that frame at 177 pounds. And Pilsy, one of the younger players in this draft. He is a June 25th birthday, so 17 years old until June. So lots of growing to do into his game. He's a raw talent who's committed to the University of Minnesota, but just like Lane Hudson, he's committed, but he's going to spend the next season in the USHL, which I would imagine with the Waterloo Blackhawks. And then afterwards, he will be attending the University of Minnesota going into the 2023-24 season. Lots to like about his game, but before I tee you up with his strengths, Pilsy, as we do, we go through each and every scouting entity that we use and what their rankings are. Tony Ferrari, very high on the kid, has him at 20th on his list. Elite Prospects has him at 32. Chris Peters has him at 40. Craig Button at 42. Bob McKenzie at 47. And Scott Wheeler at 52. That is an average of 38.83. Pilsy, what does this kid bring to the table?
Well, first off, when you know he's a Minnesota high school guy, oh my God, shocker that he's committed to Minnesota University years down the road. Like they don't want to leave. So that's no surprise at all. What I see with Sam Rinzel is this is a guy with size, but even though he has that size, he's still a decent skater and he likes to join the rush. And McKean's Hockey, they were applauding his ability to transition the puck up the ice. When you got a big mobile defenseman, he's going to be able to cruise through the neutral zone with a little more ease than some of the smaller guys. But he's still just coming out of high school. We got to keep that in mind. He did have a taste of the USHL, but I really feel like he's one of those prospects. You get excited about the raw tools. You forget about him for a while, let him develop in the USHL, let him get a year or two in college, and then 3, 4, maybe even 5 years down the road, you're sitting there being like, oh yeah, we have this great big right shot defenseman that's ready to go. And now that we've developed him, we can implement him into our system here. So I think he's going to be a guy that teams that don't need immediate help from entry-level contract prospects, they're going to be looking at him being like, we can have him show up later for us at the perfect time.
Yes, absolutely. And I mentioned the young birthday, so he's got a ton of room to grow, but at the same time, skating is probably the thing he needs to work on the most. Like, I notice he's relying on his reach, which is fine when you're that big. What's the problem with using your long reach? I mean, guys have made careers out of being able to knock pucks off sticks coming in the defensive zone, but he's getting turned around a little bit too much. Doesn't have that acceleration that you might expect from a longer limbed player. But at the same time, I think that those are parts of his game that with refinement and with time are going to come. Now, elite prospects, Mitch Brown, who's been a guest on this show, we love his opinion. He's very mechanical when it comes to skating. He compared him to Scott Morrow from last year. You remember Scott Morrow? He was committed to North Dakota, ended up decommitting, had a huge monster season with the University of Massachusetts as a freshman, nearly a point per game, dude. It was unreal. 33 points, 37 games. Now, I'm not saying it's the exact same, but he fell to 40th in the draft, Pillsy, and the only knock on him was his skating. So it's pretty similar in terms of where their faults are, but in the offensive zone, he's deceptive. He's looking for lanes. He's able to patrol the blue line. Like, this is your modern day offensive defenseman, but a guy who's also 6'4". Now, if he can get that up, but let's say improve the skating. Now, this might be a catch-22 because as he grows physically into that 6'4" frame, you might think the feet get a bit heavier. But if he can gain the weight but also improve the skating, then you're looking at a guy who I think would be a lot higher on this list, because what he does when he has control in the offensive zone, I mean, we just talked about it. 29 assists in 27 games, Pillsy. This guy's always looking for his teammates and able to find them more times than not.
Yeah, and I have a feeling with Rinzel that a lot of those assists aren't coming in the offensive zone, like taking shots and getting deflected or setting up a play. It's coming from his ability to transition up the ice. Like, I'm sure, I don't know how advanced the statistics are for Minnesota high school hockey. If we could track secondary assists,
they probably have their courses and everything all locked and loaded, man.
Yeah, honestly, you never know. But I would like to see how many of those are secondary assists gained in transition, because that's where it seems like his skill is. And yeah, maybe he's not the best skater, but to be 6'4" at 17 years old, like, he probably just popped a couple inches over like last summer. So yeah, he's probably getting used to this body, and it's probably not done growing. Let's be honest. Like, if he's already 6'4" at this age, he might have an inch or two left to go. So I think that's why I said, like, he's going to be a guy you forget about. Let him grow into his body. Let him have his fun in Minnesota. You know he's not going to be rushing to leave University of Minnesota when he gets there. So just let him marinate, let him develop, let him get into his body, and let him work on those little things. And I think you could have the makings of a really good defenseman here.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, he's put up points everywhere he went. We should pull up here his elite prospects page, as we like to do. Again, the show is available in all audio platforms, but we like to put up some graphics and everything, make it a little more fun for the viewer, more interactive for the viewers who are watching on YouTube. Now, he's rocking number 39, really struggled in the last few games. He went the last 6 playoff games without a point. As we can see, all 6 playoff games without a point. They lost in 3 games to the Sioux City Musketeers, who ultimately went on to win the championship. So as you can see here with Chaska High School, unbelievable numbers, but didn't look completely out of place playing in the USHL. And if you go back, like an offensive weapon, even in his sophomore year in high school hockey, 25 points in 19 games. Hell, even as a freshman,
I was
he was
going to
able
say,
to
yeah, the
find the
freshman
point.
year isn't bad.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see he's a June 25th, big defenseman, right shot, lots to like about him. What would be your thoughts about the Senators? Let's say even using that early second round pick and having him as a guy in the system. What's your stars for him?
I don't love the idea of using that early second round pick, but when you're looking at the rankings, Tony Ferrari has him at 20. So
Yep.
that it's very interesting there. I would rather than them use a second round pick, or a late second round pick. Sorry, I got him at 3.5 stars for the Sens because I really think he could be a guy that when JBD and Lassie have graduated or moved on or aren't considered prospects anymore, now you can reload that right side with Sam Rinzel here, and you've got someone that can be ready to go a little sooner, but also, like I said about Ty Nelson, he would provide a totally different game than JBD and Lassie, and he's got totally different size, and I just think it would bring a different element to this prospect pipeline.
Imagine a third pair of Clevin and Rinzel in 4 or 5 years from now. Like, where Clevin, yeah. Oh, dude, if everyone's tired of the Jacob Trouba debate after every hit, dude, Tyler Clevin is about to spark some internet debates. Of course, a couple Midwest kids right there. They'll be going ahead. No, they won't, because Clevin will be gone after next season. So
Correct.
As one leaves the NCHC, the other will enter. But like down the line, like the Sens, basically what I'm saying is you're used to these big defensemen being more of the physical shutdown type. That's not Rinzel's game. Rinzel's game is based on deception and based on playmaking. So I love the skill package he brings. I'm going 4.5 stars. Billsy, I wouldn't even mind if they use that early second round pick on him. Especially, I'm assuming that if they keep the pick at 7, it's going to be a winger, if not an offensive player. So why not reload? I love the right shot element because, again, like, could Lassie or JBD be on the trade block this offseason just to get a forward, maybe to add to that 7th overall pick to really get the guy you want out on the trade market? And there's never enough right shot defensemen in the system. You can never have enough because they are a rare breed, and especially I'm not going to call him a unicorn like Lane Hudson, but I will say that he brings elements that maybe you don't expect out of a player like him. So I like him. Always beats the first forechecker. I got 4.5 stars for Sam Rinzel.
Ross, before we wrap up on him, I feel like Sam Rinzel is what the Senators wanted Ben Roger to be.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like,
he's not, though.
Exactly. But I think that's where they looked at Ben Roger and they're like, we got a big defenseman here. He's very raw. Where did they draft him out of? Because he didn't play OHL, right?
I think he was already drafted to London.
But he hadn't played yet.
He hadn't played.
Yes.
Maybe. Well, I mean, they didn't play last year. He would have been, just like the other guys on this list, he would have been a rookie last year.
Exactly.
But he was playing Junior A for a couple of years with Bay of Quinte, and that's a little teaser at one of our prospects coming.
So I think they were hoping, hey, let's get this guy.
He was drafted. He played 35 games with London.
Okay, so he got a little bit at the end. I thought that might have been the case. But I think they just saw the raw tools. They said, we don't care that he hasn't played a lot at a higher skill level here. We think he's going to develop and grow. I'm not so sure. I would bet more on Sam Rinzel panning out rather than Ben Roger. But that's the vibe I get. So I don't know if that makes me think that the Sens would go for a Sam Rinzel or wouldn't. Because of
now, strength of draft, of course, a little different, but to put in perspective, Ottawa took Ben Roger 49th overall. I think Rinzel's going to be off the board by 49. I think he's going to be off the board by 40.
Okay, interesting.
Just the raw tools. I think there's going to be a GM that goes up and grabs him right there. All right, Pillsy, why don't you say a quick word from our friends at Rock Auto, and then we'll get back to our countdown here on Locked On Senators.
Yep, our good friends at Rock Auto. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes, models, it's so hard for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. They only have so much space, right? So why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questions? You're like, I don't know about this. Like, I don't know what to tell you. So just handle it yourself at rockauto.com. You have computers with access to Rock Auto, and you can even get rockauto.com parts at home on your phone. It's so easy. Save time.
Our boy Kevin already
Yes.
got his parts.
True, and he was telling us that before his parts weren't working, so he was like, you know what, I'm going to check out rockauto.com. They delivered it right to his door, and I'm sure Kevin is stoked about that. Shout out to Kevin. And Rock Auto is a family business, serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. You can save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why would you choose to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more? I wouldn't do it. Ross wouldn't do it. Kevin wouldn't do it, so we don't want you to do it. We encourage you to check out their easy-to-explore website to find the solution to your auto parts needs. Guys, go to rockauto.com right now, and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right? Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. It's rockauto.com.
You are listening to the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan alongside Brandon Piller here for the NHL Draft Rankings. If you missed any, you can go check out our YouTube playlist. We've got lots of YouTube playlists, not only about the NHL Draft, we've got all of our big interviews there, including Fridays with Ian Mendez. We've got interviews with Tim Stützle, Jake Sanderson. The list goes on and on. If you are looking for more Ottawa Senators content, Locked On Senators is 5 days a week. If you want to advertise to a passionate, locally based audience, hit us up on our Gmail account. You can find that through our YouTube page. All right, Pilsy, back to the countdown we go, and I'm pretty excited about the next two guys that we have coming up on today's list. So, without further ado, coming in at number 40 on our list with an average ranking of 38.8, it's Noah Ostlund from the Swedish Junior League and Djurgårdens.
Yes, Djurgårdens. And Ross, Noah Ostlund, he had the pleasure of being on a line with two other great prospects. One of them we talked about in an earlier episode, Jonathan Lekkerimäki, and then the other one is Ogren. And these guys together they work so well. Like EP put out a great video. It's called EP Let's Watch, I think. And it has a scout just watch these shifts. And it's kind of cool. It's like, you know, those movies where it's one storyline, but they tell the storyline through the vision of the main character. Then they go back all the way to the beginning, tell the storyline from the secondary character, then back all the way to the beginning and tell the story from the third character. Well, that's what they do on these videos. So it's kind of cool to see, okay, here's what Ostlund's thinking here, and here's what Lekkerimäki's thinking here. And he takes you all the way through it. So I would definitely recommend checking that out. And it was a really effective way to show off Ostlund. Before I get into that, though, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go through some of his dimensions and stats here. He's a centerman, left shot centerman, 5'11", about 163 pounds. He played 32 games in the J20 league, 9 goals, 33 assists. And in the playoffs, in 5 games, he had 5 goals, 2 assists. He did get a cup of coffee in the SHL, only 11 games. But as usual, I feel like anytime we mention that these kids play in the pro leagues, 0 points.
Yeah, it's really tough for them to even get opportunity, let alone production. Now, Tony Ferrari has been high on him all year. He told me that this is a kid who we got to circle. He's got him 13th on his list. 13th, Pilsy. And wait till you hear the range. So Tony's got him at 13. Yes, I said that 3 times because it is that much different than the rest of the pack. Scott Wheeler, next up, 24th on his list. Elite Prospects has him at 33, although I'll tell you some things that Elite Prospects had to say about them in their scouting meeting. Bob McKenzie at 51, and Pilsy, another range, 73 on Craig Button's list. So the average is 38.8, but the range is 13 to 73. Yeah, we know exactly where this guy is going to go.
Yeah, like this is wild. And I can sort of understand the range, Ross, but personally, I would be definitely I would be on the higher side of Button and McKenzie here because I see a lot of talent here. I think he's going to go closer to the first end of the first round, start of the second round. And what I really noticed and what they keyed in on in that EP video was his high hockey IQ is so apparent because he's able to find creative ways to get open and switches things up when he's transitioning up the ice. So your opponents are always guessing what he's going to do. And I feel like he just manages his line mates so well. Like his ability to guide Lekkerimäki and Ogren into the perfect spots and have him set himself up. So it's like, okay, here's how I'm set up. You need to be here and you need to be here. And then when I pass the puck here, we're going to do a switch. And like, they're just all over the ice, but in fluid motion, not in chaos, in a sense of organization. And Ostlund he's the conductor of it all. Like he gets it all prepared, and he's the one. Like I don't think we've seen a more true playmaker yet of the prospects we've covered, Ross. Like this guy is a disher. He excels at getting the puck to his line mates at the perfect time and allowing them to finish off plays.
Yes, I've got him as thinks extremely well is my number one attribute for him.
Yep.
He knows not where his teammates are, but where they need to be by the time the puck gets there to get him in the right spot. He competes really well too. I saw him on a few highlights just hounding pucks when a turnover's in the offensive zone. He doesn't want to have to go back the other way. He's looking to forecheck hard and try to turn over pucks and create more extended offensive zone time. Now, with that said, and yes, he makes his teammates better. I have that in my notes. I know you touched on that in great detail. But Pilsy, the tools that we've seen from the players below him, I think surpass him, which is why I believe Bob McKenzie and Craig Button are a little bit lower. Like, not a very good skater at all. Like, he's not explosive. He's not, like, he's deceptive, but he's not fast by any stretch of the imagination. He doesn't have a great shot either. He's relying on his teammates to finish these plays, which is fine. You need dishers. Just ask Joe Thornton. He's made a career out of it. But I think that he needs to work on that. And even his, what did I put the third one? Like, he doesn't have great hands. Like, he's not going to take a guy one-on-one, and maybe with some extra speed it would help. But he's not a guy who can go in and dangle. Like, he uses his hands well for passing, but he's not going to be a guy that can beat you one-on-two and create extra space for himself using his hand. So I think that those raw tools need to improve. If they did, then I would be up closer where Tony has him at 13. But to me, he's like early second round pick because, again, who doesn't want a player who competes well and makes his teammates better? Like, that to me is a pretty defining attribute for a guy at this range in the draft.
Yeah, and I would say that's fair. And I would say a team that's going to draft Noah Ostlund would have plans for where do we see him playing and who do we see him complementing? Because in my notes, I've got he's going to be someone that needs to be paired with a sniper to have success. Because if he's not playing with a skilled finisher, he's still gonna be a good playmaker. But they're just going to spend 45 seconds in the O-zone passing it around and cycling it until they turn it over, right? Which.
How about whoever takes Lekkerimäki in the first round tries to double down?
For real. Yeah, I would be...
Buffalo has, like, I think 8 and then 28 or something like that. Like, that would be a pretty sweet play. I mean, they're already locked and loaded with Dahlin and Power on the back end. I think that could be something to watch for. If you have Lekkerimäki, when you're watching the end of the first round, try to see who has Lekkerimäki. And if they have a pick in that range, why not? Bring the band back together.
And Ross, I love that idea, but I don't even think you need to do that because imagine a line with Ostlund and Jack Quinn. Oh my God. Like that. There you go. That's a perfect Jack Quinn. He doesn't give a damn who's on the ice or where he is or who the goalie is. He's shooting that puck. Ostlund does same thing. Doesn't care who's on the ice or who the goalie is. He's passing that puck. So you got a perfect tandem right there. So I think with Buffalo, that would make a lot of sense. If I'm envisioning the Senators angle of him, Ross, like I think for Ostlund, you need to get him with a finisher, a sniper, but then mix in a power forward on that other line. Like, think about a third line of Sokolov, Ostlund, and Ridley Gregg. Like, you've got all three parts there, and I think you could have some success there. So I gave Ostlund 3.5 stars here just because I don't think the Sens quite need a centerman like him right now. And I do think he projects as a centerman. I would be very shocked if he comes back as winger because he's a guy, like I said, he needs to manage his teammates. He doesn't want to just stand there and wait for someone else to dictate how traffic is going to go. He wants to be the guy dictating it. So I think there's potential and I'm interested, but I wouldn't be banging on the table for him.
No, that's fair. Now, what was I going to say about it? Oh, it was funny because I was just looking at Corey Proman's rankings that came out today if you're watching this later. So we haven't added them in yet. We have Ostlund at 40. Corey Pronman has him at 40 on
There
his
we go.
list as well.
All right.
So a little bit of unintentional coincidence there. Although that's probably an oxymoron, an unintentional coincidence. Anyways, that to say, Ostlund, I've got him at 3 stars. Again, it's just a guy where it's like, okay, the way the Sens want to play, are we really bringing in? And I'm not saying his skating is as bad as Chris Tierney, but like we saw that type of player doesn't excel under DJ
because
Smith.
Chris Tierney is similar. Like his first year, he had 39 assists. He's a disher. He's able to find guys in the right spots, but eventually, then those guys move on because they get elevated, and you're stuck at your spot playing with line mates that don't elevate you enough. So you know what? That's actually a pretty fair comparison there.
No offense. No offense, Ostlund. But no, honestly, I like his game. Like the tools that I need improvement for him to be considered into that first round range. I think that there are things you can fix for sure. And I like the way he thinks the game, super high hockey IQ. So I've got him at 3 stars, where it's like, okay, I can talk myself into the pick if they make it, but if not, it's not a guy who I'm going to be crying about once he goes off the board. But I like that. Let's take a quick peek at his elite prospects page, because we know these Swedish kids, man, they play up and down every single year that they can. So Noah Ostlund finished the year strong, 16 points in his last 10 games, including 7 goals. So a lot of his goal scoring was done at the end of the season. So maybe you like to see that. March 11th birthday, already 18, but just so. You can see the rankings a little bit there. He was a part of the under 18 championships for Team Sweden, and he contributed there 10 points in 6 games. And as we mentioned, 42 points in 32 games with the Djurgården J20 team. Let's take a look at how that compares to Lekarimäki and Ogren there. So Ostlund was actually 3rd on the team in points. Now, one of them already drafted there in Jelvik, but
and Lekarimäki did miss some time. That's important.
Well, yeah, 20 goals in 26 games. Is that good? But you can certainly see there that this was a pretty good offensive team there with 6 players over a point per game. So he was able to have good teammates. And yeah, he makes them better. But at the same time, how much do you put on that and versus how much was playing a good team helping him? I guess time will tell. But he's a guy who I've got at 3 stars in Noah Ostlund. All right, Pilsy, back to the countdown we go. We are officially into the 30s. And as we have, it's been all American Swedes, Canadians with 1 Czech player, Sapovaliv as well. Couple Russians there, but it seems like we are really getting a good draft for Canadians. And we've got one here coming in at 39th on our rankings with an average of 30, where's the average here? 38.6. So talk about how tight this is on today's list of all these 3. 38.6 from the Mississauga Steelheads centerman, Owen Beck.
And Ross, we've been teasing it. This is the prospect that is from the Bay of Quinte area. He's from Port Hope, Ontario. Very close. Up. Yeah, stand up, Port Hope. Very close to Belleville.
How many times have we frequented the Port Hope McDonald's on the way back from Belleville?
I honestly think every single time. So, I mean, that was our budget at the time. That's what we could go for on the way home from Belleville.
Oh yeah, well, Owen Beck hasn't been stopping at the McDonald's. This guy's a beast, man. He's a solid skating centerman. I think he's a guy who projects at the center ice position at the next level. Let's take a peek at his profile. He is a 6 foot, 185 pound centerman who had 21 goals, 30 assists, worth 51 points in 68 games this year for Mississauga. Only 14 penalty minutes as well, which I was impressed with. He's as high as 20th, which is on Elite Prospects. He's 29th for Chris Peters. He is 39th for Craig Button, 47th for Scott Wheeler, and 58th for Craig Button with an average of 38.6. I put in big letters, Bay of Quinte native, because as we saw with Ben Roger, the Ottawa Senators like to draft local. And we've seen that before. You know, Cody Ceci, there was that story with Andre Vasilevskiy the other day. We don't have to get into that. No. But what do you think he brings as his best strength to the table?
What I really like about Owen Beck, Ross, is he has really good patience. Like, I was watching his highlights for the Mississauga Steelheads, and what he's able to do is he's able to kind of hold on to the puck, hold on to it, and a defender's keeping his gap control, and then the defender's like, okay, he can't possibly hold on to the puck anymore. I'm going to attack him now. And then it's at that moment that he decides to make a move. And he's able to time that really well. And I find that's a really good skill to have because it creates space for your teammates, because now the defender that's trying to stop you is getting closer and closer to you, and you've created more space for your line mates. And he's able to outweigh his opponents and then make the play. His opponents, they just have a really hard time reading what he's going to do. You never know what Owen Beck can do. And he has nice hands in tight spots. So that's why he's confident enough to let the opponent get close to him to create that space, because he knows he's going to be able to make a move.
Yeah, 100%. I think he's one of the safer projections
Fair.
in this range. His floor is basically a third line center, because you know that at the very least you are getting a defensively responsible guy who killed penalties all year long. He just brings so much confidence on that side of the puck. Like, how many times did I watch like him break up a play where it's just a pass to the top of the umbrella? He's like, nah, I'm good, going the other way. Now what really is in question still, and we need to mention with all these OHL kids, did not play at all last year. So how did that stunt his development? I think maybe we'll see more offense next season out of him, because that's the one missing piece of this. Only 1 goal in his last 10 games this season. No goals in his last 5. That to say, still a plus 17 player, and that I guess speaks a little bit more defensively. Now, they played Hamilton in the first round of the playoffs. Again, Hamilton has not lost in the playoffs going into the final. That's a tough matchup for him going up against Mason McTavish there with them, but he was great in the series against Barrie. 4 assists in the last 3 games there for them to move on. So it was the second round they lost to Hamilton, not the first round there. But what I'd love to see from him is a little bit more finishing ability. Now, when I was watching the Elite Prospects scouting meeting, Lauren Kelly, who covers the OHL for them, just said the only thing holding him back from being like a mid-first round pick is the offensive production. But she noted that he is just getting robbed left, right, and center. He's creating much more than he is finishing. And I don't know if that's running into hot goalies every single night. You got to think at some point you break through. But he could be a guy who we see have a huge draft +1 season. And then all of a sudden we're like, wait, how the hell did this guy go in the late first round, early second round? This guy's a stud. So I think that he's a buy low candidate at this range in the draft where we have him at, all the way in the late 30s. So I'm pretty high on him at this projection, because he will be an NHL player. And these other guys, like, there's things that could be holding them back where there may be top line AHL guys at the end of the day. But Owen Beck, to me, within 3-4 years, you're going to see him on a third, fourth line in the NHL.
Yeah, and that's fair. And that makes a lot of sense, Ross, because like I was saying, he's able to outweigh his opponents and then get into good chances, but he's just not finishing on those chances. But I mean, getting to high danger scoring opportunities is half the battle, right? Like some of these players, they can't even dream of getting to these spots that he's getting to on the ice. So being able to finish without being able to set up, that doesn't really work out. So he's at least able to set it up now. Like you said, only his first season in the OHL. Give him some more time in junior so he can be able to kind of maybe have a little bit of a quicker release, maybe some shot deception, some angle deception, work on the goalies a little, and you could see him having a lot of success. And I think what's good to note about him too is, yes, I also think he'll be a centerman in the pro leagues, because he's able to play both sides of special teams too. So he can kill penalties, he can play on the power play. And McKean's Hockey, they said that he's hands down one of the fastest skaters in the draft. So
perfect.
That also goes into the scenario that I'm saying is he's able to get to these spots because he's so damn fast. But then what do you do when you get there? So that's where he's going to have to work. And hey, he's shined in consecutive moments. Like, he was Rookie of the Month in the OHL in November with 11 points in 11 games. So he's got it in him. It's just he's not able to kind of always finish those big plays.
Right. And I think that is a bit of the whole problem, which is no fault of his own, of not having that full season worth of development. I'm super high on this kid. The more I talk about him, the more I'm talking myself into my second 5-star guy. And I'm going for it. Woo! I got 5 stars for the Ottawa Senators to select Port Hope's finest, Owen Beck. He is a February 3rd birthday. We'll pull up his Elite Prospects page right now. February 3rd birthday, centerman. You see there that he's ranked pretty consistently throughout. Like, he doesn't have the same range as some of these other guys that we've seen on the list here. 51 points, plus 17. I like that. 10 points, or 6 points rather, in 10 playoff games. Would you like to see a couple more goals? Yeah, you probably would. But at the same time, I think next year is his real coming out party. Like, the offensive numbers were there playing for the Quinty Red Devils. And this guy went from midget hockey to the OHL. Like, he got 2 games in junior A. Wow. Like, that's a pretty big jump. And for him to make it the way he did, I think that it's just scratching the surface. So the fact that he's being deployed so much in the defensive zone, relied upon in defensive situations, I think it's going to serve him better going forward. But this offseason, you know that he's focusing on his offensive game. You know that he's watching video. How can I finish these chances that I was getting? I'm super high on him. I got him 5 stars. Where do you have him?
All right, Ross, I had him at 3.5 stars, but now that we talk a little more and now that I've heard your side and your points, I'll bump it up to 4 stars. I don't have him at a 5-star guy. I think a 5-star guy is someone with a little bit more potential to burst through a ceiling. And I think he's got a high floor, and I wouldn't say high floor, low ceiling, but no, I think there's a cap for him and he probably won't burst through that cap. So that's why I can't bump him up to 5 stars, but I got him at 4 stars because anytime you have the speed and the hockey IQ that he has, it's going to take you places.
I think I'm going to go out on a limb here. Maybe it's a little tease for tomorrow, but I would put him ahead of the next 2 guys that we're doing tomorrow.
I think we have 3 centermen tomorrow, so it'll be interesting to see how they compare.
2 centermen and a defenseman. The defenseman, Mitch Brown calls Jake Sanderson-esque. So stay tuned for all that. But the 2 forwards, both out of the OHL. I'm not going to tell you who they are, although one's a Guelph Storm, so maybe do some research there if people are trying to crack the code. But I would take him over these next 2 centermen that we're doing all day, every day. I just think he has a more projectable game to the next level. So lots of excitement here coming up as we get into the 30s. And then when we get to 2 per day, and we can really dive in, and then stay tuned because we are going to do a full 32 pick mock draft. We'll do 34 picks because then we'll do the Ottawa Senators 2nd round picks in there as well. And we're going to try to get some special guests for that. It's going to be a YouTube exclusive, but stay tuned for all of that coming up. This was a pretty much all draft ranking edition of Locked On Senators. Pilsy, you got anything on your mind?
I'm stoked for conference finals to start. I mean, these are 4 amazing teams. I wouldn't really have a problem with any of these teams winning the cup. Like, there's so much to like about all of them. So although it is getting into the off season here, and like you mentioned, this is pretty much a draft focused one, I'm still fired up about playoff hockey.
So we do need a thumbnail for this video, Pilsy. We'll take everyone a little inside baseball. So why don't we say Sens Abroad playoff updates? So let's touch on the Ottawa Senators' former players who are still involved in the postseason. I think most notably at this point, you're looking at Mika Zibanejad, who had an unbelievable assist in last night's game. He's with the New York Rangers, of course. He's actually 3rd in playoff scoring, behind only McDavid and Draisaitl. So some stick taps in there for Mika Zibanejad. Now, the other guys are all lesser known. Like, nobody on Colorado is from there. With Tampa, of course, you've got Nick Paul. So you got a nice little matchup here. Nick Paul has 2 goals, 4 assists for 6 points in 11 games.
And but 2 big goals. Like, 2 goals doesn't sound like much, but 2 big goals.
That was for Sens Army, those guys right there. And then just to wrap up, we've got Freddie Claesson as a healthy scratch there on the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then the Edmonton Oilers have a pair of Sens Abroad who have played a combined 1 game. We're looking at Derek Brassard and Kyle Turris. And then Cody Ceci, a +9 through 12 games with 7 points. So that's a little check-in on our Sens Abroad, Pilsy. I think we've asked this already, but out of those guys, because I think Boro was in the mix, Nick Paul, Mika Zibanejad, Cody Ceci, Kyle Turris, Derek Brassard, but maybe leave those last 2 out because they haven't played at all. Who are you as a Senators fan? Who do you have your pom-poms out for in the conference final?
Honestly, Nick Paul. Like, he's worked so damn hard to get to this point of his career. He got the opportunity to go to Tampa Bay. He bet on himself. The Sens gave him a fair, nice contract offer, and he said, no, I think I'm better than that. You can trade me to a contending team and I'll raise my value even more. And now he's lighting up in Tampa. He killed the Leafs. You'll love to see that. So I want to see Nick Paul lift that trophy. And especially like, man, this will be Tampa's third time celebrating with the cup. I don't know if you can party with a cup better than a place like Tampa when they already have 2 years of experience doing it.
Yeah, credit Nick Paul for what he did against the Leafs, and I look forward to him. I'm cheering for him, but at the same time, Cody Ceci would be bringing the cup back to Ottawa, right? Local kid. So
I think Nick Paul would too, though. He's still got his place
think?
there. He's a big part of the community. I don't know.
All right. We'll see. We'll see. Conference finals are going to be fantastic. We'll be back tomorrow with more draft rankings, getting in ever so close to first round talent. For the meantime, you can go subscribe to the channel Locked On Senators on YouTube. Leave a comment again below. Are you most excited about Vasilevskiy versus Shesterkin or McDavid versus MacKinnon? The West final begins tonight. We're going to be watching that. You can follow the show on Twitter at Sens Central. For today, we say goodbye. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.